I'm Dave with Hamilton Motor Company. Today we're going to be installing one of our Apple CarPlay and Android Auto upgrade interfaces in this 2020 Lexus LX570. We'll give you a complete installation video and how to do all the steps. As well, we're going to give you an overview of the kit, show you what Android Auto and Apple CarPlay look like, as well as all the other features involved with the kit. You can check out all of our products on hamiltonmotorcompany.com. As well, we have tech support available Monday through Friday at 919-858-2890. We make products for LX570, all the Land Cruisers, 4Runners, and a variety of other Lexus and Toyotas and other models. If we can be of service, just give us a call or check out our website. Power the vehicle on and set the gear shift to the neutral position. That way, when we remove the central control unit, we won't be in the way of the gear shift. The first step is going to be removing this trim baffle so we can access the battery and remove the negative battery cable to turn power off to the vehicle. This trim baffle is going to be secured by a bunch of these small clips. You're going to use your fingernails or a credit card to pop the inside portion up and then remove the clip from the vehicle. Now, you don't need to remove all of the clips. You only need to remove enough so that you can lift up on the trim baffle and access the negative battery cable. We are now going to lift up on the trim baffle and remove the negative battery cable. Lift up on the trim baffle, loosen the negative battery cable, and work it off the battery post. Inside the vehicle, we're going to start by removing this long passenger trim piece. Grab down in the passenger footwell, pull back, and then reach up and work across the dash to free this piece. Once you have the piece loose, set it in the back. To remove the trim around the start-stop button, reach into the driver's footwell, apply back pressure, free the trim, and then you're going to grab this wiring harness, loosen the clip, and set the trim in the back seat. Press down firmly on the shift boot around the gear shift knob to separate it, and then grab the gear shift knob and start twisting it counterclockwise. You're going to thread the gear shift knob fully off of the gear shift. And set it in a safe place. We are now going to remove these two leather covered panels on either side of the center console. Reach under this one, and this one lifts up. Then you can work it back and gently wiggle it free. We're removing the one on the driver's side, and it will come away in the same fashion. It is now time to remove this entire center console cover. You're going to reach in from the passenger and driver's side and firmly lift up. Now, gently navigate it around this tiny piece of trim at the back. You can work it side to side and lift it up. You're also going to navigate these tabs out from under the main center console stack. And for that, we recommend, again, working it side to side as you lift up. With the entire panel freed, simply twist it to the side and set it here for now. Lift up on the center console cover, and we're going to go ahead and disconnect these two wiring harnesses here. The black one and the white one. And then we can set this center console cover aside. Now, come over to the passenger side and grab this panel here and start from the top and pop it loose. This part will be under your rubber trim, so it sometimes helps to loosen the rubber trim first. Come back over to the driver's side and reach in to where the plastic meets the plexiglass and simply apply some back pressure to loosen this panel. Then come down around this side and loosen the panel down here. This panel does not need to be fully removed. It just needs to be loosened so we have clearance to remove the wood veneer and metal trim. The next step is to remove this wood veneer and metal trim piece. Start from the passenger side, pull it loose, and then work it gently around the instrument cluster panel. You're going to have a couple wiring harnesses to disconnect back here. The first is near this air vent. Reach in and disconnect it. You'll have one more at about the midpoint here. And then two more smaller wiring harnesses closer to the center console. Disconnect all of these and set the unit in a safe place. Now, grip under the trim piece that is under the screen on the driver and passenger side and free it. Set it in a safe place. Use a 10mm socket on an extension, and we're going to reach down and remove 1 and 2 screws on either side of the central control unit. Reach in with a ratchet that has a 10mm socket and an extension and loosen the bolts. Grip the center control unit from the top and bottom and pop it loose on each side. Then slide it out so you can access it. Now I'm going to remove this piece of grill trim here. You can either use a credit card or a trim rocker tool to help you. It's easiest if you reach in from the back where the seam meets the dash and work it free all the way across. Once it's free, gently remove it. There'll be 1 wiring harness to disconnect. We're now going to use a 10mm socket to remove these 2 bolts under the factory screen. Now, grab the factory screen and free it from its socket. There'll be 2 square wiring harnesses and 1 larger black wiring cable. Motor company harnesses are designed to get in between your factory harness and your factory equipment so that our signals can interact with your factory signals. We're going to take this blue female looking harness and start it from down here and snake it up between the 2 air vents. Motor company harnesses are designed to get in between your factory harness and your factory equipment so that our signals can interact with your factory signals. We're going to take this blue female looking harness and start it from down here and snake it up between the 2 air vents. We're now going to snake the blue male harness in the same manner. Start feeding it through the 2 air vents until you see it appear in the upper window. And then once again, pull it through. 2 blue wires are called LVDS wires, and as you can see, they run through this channel up outside the top window here. We will connect the female blue LVDS wire to the original blue LVDS wire that was plugged into your factory screen. Blue and magenta ends, and run them under this central cross member. Our wires are now fully inside the Lexus, so they won't interfere as we put things back together. We are going to make 2 connections behind the center control unit. The Hamilton wiring harness is going to intercept your factory wiring harness and then go back into the unit. So we're going to remove this large wire, connect it to this large female, and then connect our large male back into here. We're going to do that for 2 ports. We're going to do it for the main one labeled power wire, and we're going to do it for this smaller one labeled HU audio. This is the power wire, and this is HU audio. In on this tab on the gray bar, and slide the tab back. The main power wire will then come free. You can put it into our harness here. And click it into place. The Hamilton harness will then install in the same socket back into your central control unit. Make sure that this clicks down. We will then repeat this process for the HU audio wire. Is that visible to you? Mm-hmm. Remove the HU audio wire. Connect it into the Hamilton harness labeled HU audio, and return the male from the Hamilton harness back into the central control unit. I'm going to begin preparing the underside of the center console cover. We have this harness here with a simple T and a simple connector. It is labeled CP mouse. Disconnect this white connector from under your mouse here, and it will plug into the female end of our harness. The male end will then plug back into your mouse. Push it in until you hear it click. This harness will then ultimately connect into our main wiring harness here. We will save that until we are ready to reinstall. Grip this trim box on the left and right side and simply pop it loose. This will allow us to snake the mouse connector into the center console area here. We're going to take both ends, go around the cross member, gently loosen the trim piece around your center trim box and feed your USB down into the center trim box and tuck the wire into this available slot here. Then re-secure your center trim box. It's now time for us to run the wires down into the center console cavity where we will be installing the metal interface box. There's a channel on the driver's side that runs between the upper central control unit cavity and the lower center console cavity. One by one, we will feed the main harness, the accessory harness, LVDS adapter harnesses through this channel and into the center console cavity. You can reach in your fingers from the sides to help as you're feeding these harnesses down. Once your harnesses are all under the center console cavity, you can go ahead and begin plugging them into that metal interface box. You're going to plug in that magenta and blue harness. As well, there are two long skinny harnesses that plug into the interface box. The interface box will install in front of the factory gear shift. You're also going to need to run that factory mouse adapter harness that we just showed up through that same channel, and it will connect into the Hamilton primary harness. All the wires in the antenna can tuck with that metal interface box right in front of the factory gear shift, and you can just fold the wires neatly on top of it. With all the harnesses connected, we can go ahead and reinstall that center trim box. 3 harnesses will plug into the back of it. Make sure there are no wires running directly under the box and that they are running through that channel. With the harnesses all reconnected, you'll be able to take the center trim box and push it neatly back into its place. Then we can begin reinstalling the center control unit. All the wiring harnesses are connected behind it. We need to make sure that there's no harnesses pressed in between the top of it or in between the bottom of it, and that everything is neatly folded behind it. And that will give us enough room to press it back into its original cavity. So we recommend just pushing from the passenger and driver's side back and forth, and it'll snap back into its cavity. We need to install the Hamilton harness T in place of the factory mouse. This is under the center console cover. We have removed this male harness from the factory mouse, plugged it into the Hamilton harness, and we are now going to plug the Hamilton harness back into the factory mouse. This whole harness will run up through that channel between the central control unit and the center console and plug into the main Hamilton harness. We're now going to reconnect the 2 factory harnesses into the center console cover. With all the wires connected and the interface box below the center console cover, we can go ahead and begin to work the center console cover back into place. You'll start at the front and make sure that lip is firmly under that center trim box, and then you'll work to the back. There's a small piece of plastic trim that you need to maneuver on each side as it goes past the center console cover. Be gentle with this piece and it will fit through all the levels of the center console cover. As well, be aware of where the gear shift is and make sure that it fits nicely through the boot. Don't apply too much pressure until you see it appear out the top of the boot. You can then maneuver the center console cover back and forth until it gently snaps back into its original place. Ensure that all the snaps between the front and the back click into place. We can now begin to wire up the original factory screen. This is the Hamilton LVDS, the male wire from the Hamilton unit. The original LVDS is plugged into the Hamilton female. We'll start, there's a black wire and a white wire from your factory screen. They plug directly back in. And then the male blue LVDS wire from the Hamilton interface will plug into your factory screen. With all those plugged in, you can line that bracket up onto its original mount and set it into place. The speaker grate from the top of the factory screen needs to go back into place as well. There's one wiring harness to connect on the front passenger side. Then you can just line those white clips up and gently apply pressure on all sides and fit that speaker grate back into place. The two 10mm bolts, we will use a socket wrench and go ahead and tighten those back down below the factory screen and above the center console. There will be 4 bolts in total. That trim piece under the factory screen will snap back into place, line up the connectors, and apply a little bit of pressure. Now the wood veneer and metal trim vent assembly, we will reinstall the 3 harnesses on the assembly and then connect that one primary harness. Then line up those 3 vents with the factory vent holes. Then go ahead and start on the driver's side, work it around the center cluster trim piece, and go ahead and apply pressure from the driver's side, reaching out to the passenger side, ensure that all the clips along the length of the unit snap into place and that the console fits flush. Work to gently reinstall the gauge cluster trim. The 2 trim clips on the outermost edges are angled up slightly and you need to use a little downward pressure. You can reach in and push the trim down a little bit and then it'll gently snap back into its place. Don't apply too much pressure to this trim piece. We will now reinstall the trim on the outside of the passenger dash. This trim needs to go under the weather stripping. You can either reinstall it over the weather stripping and use your finger to maneuver the weather stripping over it, or you can install it at a little bit of an angle. I installed it over the weather stripping and just used my finger to massage the weather stripping on top of the trim piece. Now reinstall the trim pieces, the leather trim pieces on either side, the factory and passenger of the center console. And go ahead and re-clip in the start-stop button and snap this trim piece back into place, starting at the top and moving down. Make sure all the clips are fully snapped in. Finally, the passenger leather cover trim piece will run along the dash and then snap in on the bottom as well in the footwell area. Finally, we will thread the gear shift knob back onto the gear shift. Gently screw it in tight and then line it up straight with the vehicle and pick up the shift boot and snap it into place. We will then go ahead and reinstall that negative battery cable and tighten it down. This battery cable once again uses that 10mm socket. With the negative battery cable reinstalled, press all those tiny clips back into place. The installation is now complete and we have factory style Apple CarPlay. That concludes our installation in the 2020 Lexus LX570. If you need any help with the installation, our tech support team is here Monday through Friday by phone, or you can email us every day of the week. Also, we have other videos that'll show you an overview of the kit, how it works, and how to set up Apple CarPlay. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help. You can check out our website, hamiltonmotorcompany.com.